Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you my solo of Sigmascape 4 on the Savage difficulty. That's right, Kefka and God Kefka are now in the soloable territory in patch 6.2. It might have really been doable in 6.1, but I didn't try. I just waited for the item level upgrade because I figured it would be easy. In case you didn't watch my 07 Savage video, normally I would upload these and just let them play after I do a quick intro, but Final Fantasy 6 music in particular and 4 are very tough when it comes to YouTube. They get false copyright claimed all the time, and so by providing commentary, I can avoid that. And besides, people do ask me to discuss these things anyway. I had someone ask me to do a kind of beginner's guide to soloing content before, but content just kind of churn and burns. You know, the higher our item level gets, the quicker things like this become, so I just try to do them as early as I think they are possible. And with Kefka and God Kefka, yeah, this was pretty close to doable in 6.1. I didn't really put too much time into it. I just recognized that maybe someone who was a more experienced tank who had better muscle memory and mechanics could probably do it. And also not on Warrior. I assume Dark Knight or Gunbreaker would have been the only ones doable, if at all, in 6.1. So I stick to Warrior because I don't really play tank all too often, occasionally Paladin, but I almost hopped on Dark Knight for a few of these at some point. Honestly, it's one of the easier solos. I think it is really just a matter of number crunching, because for the most part, nothing here can really kill you. I almost forget I even have defensive cooldowns. I could be using Vengeance for damage reduction and for dealing damage back to bosses. I mean, across an entire fight. A few Vengeances might add up to, you know, 0.6, 0.7%, and sometimes that's how much I'm squeezing through at the very end of these. This one in particular, when we get to the second phase, I really wish I had been using Vengeance aggressively, and I was even thinking to myself I should be doing that, and I really wasn't. So if you are doing Warrior, and you find you don't actually need Vengeance for anything to save you, I would highly advise trying to use it wherever you think you're going to counter the most damage and as close to on cooldown as possible. For this first phase, I've just been talking past it because there's not really a whole lot to say. You just need to know Kefka's mechanics because, again, nothing is really a threat to you. The biggest threat actually is here, is potentially going off the edge to the orb, but you can just use arm's length. About the time Kefka's going to be casting Graven Image at about that time, and when it's like 50 to 60% done, you can pop arm's length or surecast or whatever, and you would be completely safe. And then you just have to memorize all of the patterns. It's really on God Kefka where you have to sort of forego, I guess, common sensibilities. You know, sometimes we see mechanics, we think we have to do mechanics the way that they're supposed to be done. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of surprised by these solos, because I think we all know the fights, or those of us that do know the fights, and we think about them logically, like, oh, how am I going to do the meteors? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? For this section, you know, this is just supposed to be a spread AoE, but some people might be worried it was going to be the gravity AoE. Fortunately, on solo, you know, the tank just gets that. I wasn't even watching for the half-room AoE. And I forgot about the arrow here, so I actually had to do it just standing off in the middle of nowhere. That's me. This was my first time back in here. And yeah, I forgot about the arrow knockback, so I didn't have anything for that. And so I had to very quickly do a gap closer. Fortunately, a very, very responsive skill in this particular case. Didn't realize that until I actually came back in here. And that's kind of the end of it. You know, there's just entire mechanics missing because so many times these fights are designed for whole parties. And tanks get targeted by certain things or are more likely to be targeted by certain things. And they end up being easier things because they're already designed for the tanks to do. In this case, even if it had been the gravity AoE, I don't know that it would have been a problem. I think I just would have needed to think about the healing a little bit more, but that's not how it worked out. So instead, we just have these stone AoEs, and they do basically nothing. And then here, it's just a matter of recognizing the half room that's not safe. And it's not like you can do anything with this fire AoE. No matter whether it's fake or real, you're gonna have to do it the same way. And everything else is just dodging AoEs in this fight anyway. So my health just is never a concern. It was always about dealing enough damage to Kefka in order to get through all of this. Now, for this first phase, at the very least, all the tanks can do it so easily. It doesn't matter, Gunbreaker, Dark Knight, Paladin, War. They would all have an easy time with this first phase. So probably the most approachable of a lot of the Savages that I've actually soloed in recent times. Even amongst some of the extreme trials that I had soloed. In case you didn't keep up with my solo videos, I had soloed through pretty much all the soloable Stormblood encounters. by, you know, like 6.05 or something like that. There's a couple that weren't soloable yet. Tsukuyomi is going to require a lot more damage, and I don't think Susanoo's ever going to be soloable. Maybe there'll be like a rework of some skills that makes the sword phase doable while you're protecting against it, but until that happens, it's just not really on the cards. But here, yeah, I mean, there's just no... So trust me, if it wasn't for the YouTube false copyright problem, this is one I would just let play out. But it's a pain, so I get to at least tell you about it while we watch me beat the heck out of Kefka. Going into the fight a little bit more, it's crazy to think how old this fight is. I actually am not a huge fan of this fight. I don't like kind of blind fan service. So as much as Final Fantasy VI is my favorite, this is I feel an injustice to Kefka, especially considering how we see them done in how we see other characters in Final Fantasy XIV that are references to original works portrayed. This just felt like a cop-out when there's so many other things I feel like they could have done with it, even if he is really a Final Fantasy VI, very specific to his mannerisms and everything. But yeah, we're almost done with the first phase, so you need to get Kefka to under 60%. So as soon as it says 59 on the target bar, then you know you're already pushed to the next phase. And we still have a hyperdrive here. There's 3 Ultima upsurges plus a couple more auto attacks. So I'm way ahead of the DPS check here on the first phase. There's just nothing to stop you except accidentally being knocked off the edge, which can happen in a couple of different places, but you fall prey to it once and you kind of get past it. Now, I actually am combining this footage with a different second phase. This was in an instance where I didn't actually kill God Kefka. I was still figuring things out. But this was me, like, I think this was the first instance I hopped into when I said, let me try soloing this for 6.2. So I was a little rusty, and I hadn't soloed all the way through God Kefka in 6.1. I just hadn't even tried, really. So I didn't have the practice, I didn't have the muscle memory, whatever. But we come into the transition, and as soon as he's targetable and you jump up, I think as soon as it says the limit gauge is reset, you can realistically jump off the edge and reset the fight. And you really want to, because you want your pot to be off cooldown. I should probably talk about that. So I am in full item level 610 gear. I do have a 615 weapon, and I think I'm pentamelded in this. So I put a lot of work into my substats for this. All the crit, all the direct hit. And I am using new pots, and I'm actually using carrot pudding. I actually think I should have maybe used nibbles, because my skill speed is actually awful. It's 2.45. That is not a good skill speed amount for Warrior for this. So I'm actually incredibly unoptimized in that regard. I'll probably fix that after I get more gear or something. But God Kefka, on the other hand, so while the DPS check in regular Kefka was super easy, the DPS check here is a lot more severe, because you have to ignore a lot of mechanics, and a lot of those mechanics give you damage downs. So it's about taking the ones that won't kill you and using them to get more uptime on God Kefka, while making sure to adequately perform against the other mechanics or avoid the mechanics that give you damage downs if possible. You saw there for Celestiad, I was like, none of this kills me. Like, I'm so over leveled for it, it doesn't matter. So I just eat that so I don't have to back off for even a GCD. And you're going to see that quite a few times later. Speaking of which, in Forsaken 1, it's pretty easy. I just do this Stem the Tide and Bloodwetting shield for the first bit. And shockingly, it's enough. You can put it up whenever, because as long as it's going to be up for all these explosions, because all the explosions here just don't break the shield. It's like a 500 potency shield, but with everything that you have, it doesn't even threaten you. You don't need to be at full health. You don't need to do anything. You just pop that one little shield from Bloodwetting, and you're all set. This is where the damage down starts stacking up, though. You can see I have 3 stacks. I'm actually about to get 3 more because of Heartless Archangel 2 here, and because of those. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not standing in those meteors, it's because they require 2 people. Even if I stand in them, it's just a little bit of extra damage I'm going to take. They're all still going to explode anyway. And here, I just do a Thrill of Battle buffed, Shake It Off, and that covers all this stuff as well. I make sure to use Bloodwetting a little bit later on here so I can start getting some healing. And if I manage to hold on to any of my other heals, you know, Equilibrium or anything here, they do also help, but the damage is so low that it's not really that major of a consideration. Just make sure you have the shield for both, because all the AoE explosions are deadly. Now, I mentioned about mechanics you can ignore for uptime. Trine is not one of them. There's a little bit of RNG in trying to deal with Trine. This first one, not so much. This is very much just understanding how to dodge Trine. But the second and fourth ones are annoying, and you can get better or worse runs depending on the trine patterns you actually get. If they hit you, it's a healing reduction and a stacking damage reduction. And in this current gear, you can't really afford to do that. You might be able to if you're playing really well, or if you're on maybe Dark Knight and you're getting through. But I mean, why chance it? You know, trine isn't that difficult to get past. Maybe with more gear, the second and fourth trine you might ignore just for the sake of, just to keep hitting the boss because it doesn't matter anyway. So there's nothing too fancy there. But it's just me staying in range here. I actually want God Kefka kind of close to the edge of the room now that all the mechanics are done. You do have to watch for the past and future mechanic, but it's not that bad. Even if you do get hit, it gives you a vuln up. But again, nothing's dangerous enough to kill you. As long as it doesn't give you a damage down, it's okay to be hit by it. And that's actually a motto I had to follow for Forsaken 2, because I realized how important it was going to be to pretend Forsaken 2 didn't exist. In Forsaken 1, I at least had to time shields to make sure that I didn't die to the AoE explosion. So I needed, you know, my bloodwetting, and I needed Shake It Off at the right times in order to keep myself as safe as possible. Here, it's a matter of just making sure I get uptime. So I just take the marker and I just rotate around the boss. Even if I get past, ends, futures, connected, it doesn't matter. I just need to make sure I'm in range the whole time. I can't do anything about all these meteors anyway. There's a 4-stack meteor, there's a 2-stack meteor, there's more 2-stack. I'm going to get a ton of damage downs no matter what. So I just need to make sure I hit the boss the whole time and never let up. Now, in case you're wondering about the damage downs, they're not that severe individually. They're only really bad because they stack up super high. I think each of them is like 5% or something in that capacity. So even at 7 stacks, I think it's like 35% reduced damage. It matters, but it doesn't matter that much. I tried to drag him to the middle there when it was a Celestiad coming. Thought it was Trine coming next. Had forgotten that. And you do want him in the middle for Trines 2 and 4, so... You know what? This is why this run... So this actually is a nail-biter at the end, because I was making all these little mistakes. Oh, there I go again. Yeah, he doesn't want to move. Another reason why I don't like this fight. But it's also, you know, just me forgetting the timeline and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just a matter of trying to pretend all that stuff doesn't exist and trying to get it done. I lost my train of thought a little bit, but it's fine. We'll get it back. Now... Going back to the damage downs, that's where my train of thought was. Did I get inside trines here? No, I didn't. Great. Bad pattern. You can actually get very middle of the room as the safe spot here. And if you don't, then, I mean, what are you going to do? You got to go to the safe side for the trines and get there. Okay, I swear. With the damage downs, you get them and they're around so frequently, I couldn't really give myself the opportunity, on Warrior at least, maybe on the other tanks this isn't true, to wait. Because I would actually lose inner releases if I wholly held them and waited for damage downs to fall off. There are some cases where I hold the Primal Rend itself, but still use the inner release. And honestly, I could probably have optimized more. There's probably a few places where I could hit inner release and still wait to do the actual Fell Cleaves, but I didn't. I just pretty much said, I need to go, and if I know I'm about to get damage downs, and I think you're going to see that in a little bit, during Forsakens 3 and 4. If I know I'm going to get damage downs, I'm going to have damage downs, but inner release is coming up in the middle of all that. The goal is to front load the Primal Rend before I get more damage downs, and it becomes even weaker. So you're going to see that here, because you get up to 9 damage downs during Forsaken 3 and 4. In fact, not up to, you get 9 by the end of it all. So I'm actually going to pop my inner release. I'm at 3 here. Now, ideally, if my inner releases are quick enough, I would get this and immediately Primal Rend. Unfortunately, the train of thought that I just gave you, I think I didn't realize until I was doing it the second time around. I should have Primal Rended there while I had 3 damage downs instead of 5. So if you're playing a job that needs to burst during these damage downs, that's how you have to kind of rationalize your GCD usage. Because that's just like Forsaken 1, you can just shield it. I actually Shake It Off for both Forsakens 3 and 4 for that. There's no reason not to. I don't need to Shake It Off for anything else. Even if I don't have the Bloodwetting shield, it's fine. And realistically, Kefka should be in the middle of the room for this section. This is me getting a little lucky. Wings of Destruction, you should be facing Kefka directly east or west. And then the statue to the north will do either half room AoE on either side. So you can make one quadrant of the room safe. And if I had gotten unlucky there, I would have had to have completely left the boss. Actually, though, I say that, but now that I think about it, that half room AoE doesn't give you a damage down, and it's not lethal. So I actually probably would have just eaten it in this case if I did get it on that side, given what my position is for Kefka. It's not a very good position at all. And now the fight's on repeat. Again, it's just a matter of racing this last bit of enrage, making sure to pot when there's no damage downs for the first two. I think you have to pot during a damage down for the last one, or at the very least, a portion of your pot is going to be in a damage down unavoidably. And then to just try to burn through. I also made a big habit of, if I know I don't have a pot coming up anytime soon, it really doesn't matter when I use any of my burst tools. I just need to make sure they're all up for the pot window. So if I can ensure that I get an extra Infuriate inside of a window where I have no damage downs. Here we go. Here's the middle pattern, but I screwed it up because he wasn't directly in the middle. What a terrible run this was for me to finally get my clear on. Oh well, a clear is a clear. Yeah, so you definitely want to just pop as many things as you can when you don't have damage downs, so they're on cooldown when you do have damage downs. As often as you can achieve that, your DPS it's just better for your overall DPS across the fight. And it's not like I have any raid buffs. You know, I have my pot, but other than that, I should be trying to keep Surging Tempest up the entire time. So I'm not timing it for 1 minute or 2 minutes. There's nobody to time it around except myself and my pot window. So that's another thing. That's a habit that you need to break when you're doing these solos. You need to look outside of your conventions of thinking, okay, this is my 2 minute window. This is my 1 minute window. Instead of just thinking of, when can I time my ability so that it's hitting the boss at an optimal time and doesn't mess up my pot window? Those are the two most major considerations. So I'm at about 15.5% getting into this, and now we're going to have to start dealing with those damage downs again. So the speed at which the boss dies is going to be affected a lot. By the way, don't miss that arm's length. You need that uptime. You can gap close as well, but you don't need that arm's length for anything else. Make sure you use it there. So this is where I did it. I inner release and I primal rended immediately. I also, I think, used an Infuriate there and tried to land that and just pushed all of my fell cleaves back into the end. I actually almost lost that last fell cleave to the timer. Also, I had Infuriate up. Why did I use arm's length? Oh wait, no. Inner release came up after the knockdown. Never mind. This is all the same, and at this point, it's just a matter of doing Forsaken 4 correctly a second time while pushing as much DPS as possible. And again, it slows down a lot because of the 9 damage stacks that you get. But, I mean, what are you going to do? There, I was actually a little afraid because I screwed up my healing. I screwed up my timing. But you can home gang. If you go into Forsaken 1, 3, or 4, and you don't think you can get any health back before a tank buster or a room wide, pop home gang. Or pop your invuln. That should be more than enough to get you through anything. I used it earlier in the fight. I used it here. And at this point, it's a race. You have until Kefka gets to 4 damage stacks, then he'll cast his final Enrage. And you're going to see my camera kind of freak out at the end because I just started moving my mouse like on that last GCD. And honestly, I shouldn't have actually gotten this clear here. I got pretty lucky. It should have taken me one more attempt after this. That's Godka. Ignore everything you can except for Trines and just pump damage. Here you go. Light of Judgment. He's at 1%. This is the final Enrage. 0.9. I'm on all my weakest GCDs. And it's one more. The Fell Cleave for the win. And I do it just before I take the damage. I got so lucky there. You saw my camera whip around at the end. Right now, it is a tight DPS check. This will be a joke with any item level from the upcoming Savage or Tome Gear or any of that. Any of the struggles I had are going to go away before 6.2 is up. So if you're on any of the tanks, probably be okay by the end of the patch. So if you're looking to get the mount from this, or you just want to do it for the sake of doing it, go right ahead. I don't think you'll have too much of an issue at all. I will say Paladin is risky. I don't really know how to approach Paladin because they don't have a shield. So the incurable buff actually does become a problem for them. So they might be the one that can't do it now that I think about it. If only Divine Veil gave you your own shield. Might be able to do it, but even then it would still be kind of a tough spot given the order of the mechanics that happens there. Anyway, that is going to be a wrap for my solo of 08S. I have soloed 09S, and I'm going to have soloed 03S soon. I'll post videos on that as soon as they are ready. Anyway, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.